let's talk for a minute. Event season's warming up. Well, man, it's going to be hot this year, and I don't just mean the weather. We've got back-to-back events, end of August, into September, October, November is packed here in Ansteorra, especially Windheim. And December, we're going to be busy. And everywhere you go, there are tournaments. We have an archery event coming up. It's supposed to be all archery, but oh, no, wait, we're doing a rapier tournament there. Long story, ask me in person. What's a tournament? There's a lot of you who have heard about tournaments. There's a lot of you who have read about tournaments in the SCA, but you've never been to one. You probably don't know what a tournament is. Now, let's start off with, at its broadest, you will hear tournament almost always used to describe a competition to determine a single victor in one of the martial disciplines. Heavy weapons tournaments are the most common and long-standing in the SCA. Chivalric combat is the other term used for them. The rapier community hosts tournaments. A lot of the same format between the two. There are some differences, but again, a lot of fighters get together. They use a format to decide who's the single best fighter of the day, and that's the winner. Archery tournaments are very common. And you will hear them called, archery is one of those funny ones. You will hear them called archery tournaments. You also hear them called archery competitions. And the terms are interchangeable. Thrown weapons, in my experience, technically they could still be called tournaments, but I really hear those called competitions more often than not. But we're going to stick with the actual martial arts physical combat definition for my explanation here. We have chivalric combat, we have rapier combat. Now, of course, there is side sword, which is an offshoot of the rapier progression, the rapier evolution, which right now really kind of bridges the difference between chivalric combat and rapier. It's one of the most historical forms of martial arts we practice in the SCA right now. But what is a tournament, and how does it run? So let me give you a very quick rundown, and there are broad strokes here. And are there exceptions to this? Yes, there are exceptions to everything I'm going to say, but I still feel like this is 95% accurate based on my experience in a quarter century of playing in the SCA. So the morning of the tournament, there will be a call for armor inspection, and that is where everyone who is fighting in that tournament, usually a herald will go out and will announce the list has opened, sign up for the tournament has opened, and armor inspection has begun, or something of that flavor. And that is where you will see all the fighters who intend to enter that competition go down to the list field with their armor and their equipment. They get inspected by the marshal, and they go to the list mistress or list master, and they sign up and get their name on the list. It's basic entry and inspection. Then a little while later, you will hear usually a 5 or 10 minute warning for sign up. Sign up for the tournament will close in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And there's always 1 or 2 people that come running in at the last minute because they still need to get their name on the list. Then you will hear, usually the hosting nobles or the royals or whoever's hosting the tournament will call all the fighters together, and they will announce the format. They will explain the format. Now, there are many different formats. There's single elimination, where if you lose a fight, you're dead. End discussion. There's double elimination, where if you lose 2 fights, you're dead. Then there's a Swiss 5, where everyone will get to fight 5 times, and then the people with the most wins at the end of that session, so there'll be 5 rounds. The people at the end of 5 rounds with the most wins, they will then be put into either a single or double elimination tournament. And that's, Swiss 5s are a lot of fun because you're guaranteed to get 5 fights, doesn't matter how many you win or lose, and if you're good and you win a lot, you're going to get probably 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 fights, depending on how many are left at the end of the the Swiss 5 section. Sometimes there are barrier fights where you both come up. You have to put your offhand on a barrier, and you're sitting there single sword, or you have to put your foot on the line, and you're muscle up against each other. There's a lot of different formats for fighting, but that is usually where it is explained. This is how the fight is going to be decided. Now, once that is done, you're going to hear the herald call. You can hear the herald call out to all the fighters. All fighters attend for the pairings of the round. And that is where the herald, usually several heralds if it's a larger tournament, will announce who is fighting who in the first round of the tournament. And as a career list herald myself, I can tell you that is one of my personal favorites, because you get to see the guys, oh, I get to fight him, or oh crap, I get to fight him, or I got to fight him, or I got to fight him. That's always a lot of fun for me. I enjoy that a lot. So you will see that happen, and you'll see the guys start pairing off and talking about, okay, do you have all your armor? Do you need to borrow a pair of gauntlets? Or that kind of conversation goes on. Then once the pairing's done, there's usually a very, very short break, and then you'll hear the heralds call the first pair of fighters, the so-and-so and so-and-so, please come to the field, and they'll begin the process, and that's where the tournament starts. And the first pair of fighters will come on the field, and you will hear the herald do the salutes, because there's a salute. This is a royal tournament. There is ceremony. And even if it's only a baronial tournament or a local tournament, you are still on crown lands. You are subjects to the crown. So it is, you will salute the royals, the nobles. You will salute whoever it is you're representing on that field. You salute the person you're fighting. In some kingdoms, the tradition is also include to salute the audience who are out there watching you, witnessing this day. And once that's done, the herald will hand over field to the marshals, who will do the last second checks, make sure both fighters are ready, and you will eventually hear them say lay on, and that's where the fighters go out. And depending on what discipline we're talking about, that can be a very violent, very brutal spectacle of about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, sometimes longer. And then when one of them falls over and calls good, the marshals will declare, they'll turn to the other guy and they will declare victor. Now keep in mind, they are not deciding who the victor is. That is decided between the fighters. In the SCA, you acknowledge whether a blow is a killing shot to you, but no one else. So it's not good unless I say it killed me. But the marshals will point and announce and affirm what the fighters between them have decided, and usually the heralds will step in and announce it again a little louder and perhaps a little more flair if they're any good. But then it's the next pair comes on, and if it's a big tournament, we'll have 2 fields. If it's a bigger tournament, we'll have 4 fields. Have I been to some tournaments with 8 or 16 fields going at once? Yes. Few and far between, but yes, I've seen monster tournaments with 16 fields. But overwhelming majority, at least here in Ansteorra, is 1 or 2. And if it's more than 2, you usually see us break it down into 4 fields, just so we're not standing out there waiting for hours for this line of fighters to get done. And then when the first round done, everyone has gotten their fight in. All the wins and losses are recorded by the list mistresses, and then they do the pairings for the second round. And the heralds will come out and go, fighters, attend for the pairings of the second round. And you keep going until, based on whatever format you're using, you have one decided winner. And at which point, there's usually a lot of pomp and circumstance in the last round. The nobles will come out and stand immediately beside the field. Usually the most senior heralds will come on to do announcements. Usually the most senior marshals will step up to marshal that fight. That's where all the high rollers, all of the high level players will usually step in and make sure the ceremonies and traditions are preserved for the tournament. And then by now, by the way, when it's down to the last 2 people, usually most other guys, they're doing one of 2 things at that point. They have either started to take armor off so they can go rest, because it's usually, even in cold weather, that's a hot and grueling process. Or they may be off to the side, away from all the activity, doing pickup fights, and that's just two guys practicing or goofing off or fighting or whatever, and that's where their fighting is not going to disturb the proceedings on the main list field. But when the final fight is over, that is usually where you will announce the winner. Now, some tournament formats, the winner is not based on who has the most wins, so that they may tally it up based on a vote. I've been to some tournaments where all the fighters vote on who's supposed to win based on their conduct of the day. I've seen some tournaments where the victor is chosen based on his conduct or based on his prowess, and is chosen by the nobles or the royals, or a combination of those and perhaps the previous year's champion, whatever the particular tradition may be. And that victor may be announced that night at court, or they may open court right there and announce it. I don't know. Everything's different. But then when it's done, with very, very few exceptions, when the tournament's done and the deed is over, there's still going to be a bunch of guys out there in armor doing pickup fights and practicing and cooling off or warming up, or some of the younger fighters who probably didn't enter the tournament may be out there, doing pickup fights with some of the knights or some of the centurions or grant level fighters that are out there, some of the high order fighters, to get their practice in. That is part of the dynamic of the tournament, is you're going to have this ecosystem surrounding it of the fighting community, doing what fighters do. Fighters love to fight, and that's what they're there for. But after a while, and usually not a long while after that, after the tournament's over, that's where you will start seeing them disband in mass, and you will see the fighters start grabbing their gear up and dragging it back to their tents or their cars, and they start armoring down. Sometimes they go find a bathroom or a washroom, and they'll change clothes, maybe get a shower, because they got other stuff going on later on in the day, and they need to be clean and fresh for that. And that now bleeds into the other parts of the event and what goes on there. But you will hear a lot of discussion about tournaments. You will hear this tournament is going on or that tournament is going on. And some of you have never seen a tournament, or you haven't been exposed to one, or you haven't watched one yet. And that is my summary of very broad brush summary. There are plenty of exceptions. Even as I say this, I'm thinking of exceptions. But general rule of thumb for the conversation, that is a really, really good summary of overall how an SCA fighting tournament is run, and what goes into it, what comes out of it, and what to expect when you go to one, whether you're going to watch or maybe you're going one to enter if you're ambitious. So hopefully I'll see you at another tournament sometime in the near future. I plan to be heralding a few of them in the next couple of weeks. But until then, I'll see you at the next event. Goodbye. God bless.